Welcome to The Real Deal. I'm your host, Kim Hollingshead. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN right here in Nashville, Tennessee. And we absolutely love it here in Nashville, especially in the springtime, don't we? With all of the flowers and the plants blooming, the grass seems to be so green. We have beautiful rolling hills. I mean, I will stand by this to the end. There is no place more beautiful than Middle Tennessee in the springtime. Absolutely love living here. It is truly God's country. Y'all, we are so blessed to live in this great state. And, one of the things that makes Nashville so appealing to people from all over the country, well, we have a lot of reasons. Number one, it's safe. It's beautiful. The people here are lovely. The schools are great. I mean, this is just a fantastic place to raise your children, isn't it? But also our state has a lot of fantastic financial reasons for why moving here would be ideal for anybody who's in we've got the East Coast and we've got the West Coast, right? People from the North are moving here. Everybody is complaining about the Californians coming in and, oh my gosh, they're ruining our wonderful area. I don't believe that. Californians are wonderful people. I absolutely love California. And I would live there in a heartbeat if I could. It is gorgeous out there, and the people there are just lovely, kind people. So I don't think that they're ruining our city. They're all welcome. But Tennessee has done a lot of amazing things to attract people. We've got the West Coast, we've got the East Coast, and Middle Tennessee. This is the Gold Coast, okay? The reason is because we have just this absolutely massive influx of wealth coming in from high tax states like California and New York. One of my lovely clients is from New York City, and he talks about it all the time. He's like, it's impossible to do business in that city now. And that is the reason why I've come down here, because I can actually make money in real estate in Nashville. Those days are long gone in New York City. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who would agree that there are some things going down in California that have driven businesses out. You guys will recall just maybe a year ago, there was the huge spat between Gavin Newsom and Elon Musk. And Elon Musk said, forget it, I'm out of here. And I'm taking everything and we're moving to Texas. There's just too many hurdles for businesses in those high tax states. And what Tennessee has done a fantastic job of is making Tennessee very appealing to high net worth individuals. So for instance, Tennessee does not have a state income tax. And a lot of people don't know this, but Tennessee also does not have an estate tax. So federal estate tax has that minimum estate size of $15 million before the estate tax hits. So, you can come to Tennessee, and if you don't have an estate tax and you're a wealthy individual, then you know that your assets are going to be protected here in the state. So it's no wonder that just in the year 2025 alone, 42,000 people moved to the state of Tennessee. It is fantastic for this state. We welcome everyone to it. Come be a part of what we have going on. You're here and join in what we have going on in Tennessee. And we hope that you enjoy it and that you keep our traditions alive. And then also, the United States is a melting pot, and we welcome the traditions that you bring from your other states as well. We're meant to be a conglomeration here in the U.S. It's not like, we do definitely have our own personality and our own flavor here in Tennessee, and we want to keep it that way. But we do welcome people from different cultures, from different countries, from different states to come here and help make our lives richer, to bring your unique perspectives to the table. And, we can learn from each other in so many different ways. So welcome. Did you guys know that Williamson County is the absolute hub of the entire Gold Coast? And this is going to really shock some people, but the median home price in Williamson County is $1.1 million. That is mind-blowing. So just to put that in perspective for you guys, the national average for the median home price is $400,000. And for a lot of Americans who are listening to me talk tonight, y'all are sitting here listening and going, yeah, $400,000 is a lot of money for a house, Kim. I mean, it is. And Middle Tennessee is very unique, being the Gold Coast, that our average home price in Williamson County is at $1.1 million. This rivals some of the most luxurious areas in the entire country. But not only that, our property values are appreciating at record levels. For instance, in Madison, Tennessee, I said it a few months ago. I said Madison is a hot zone for appreciation. Madison and Hendersonville is another hot area. Those areas are appreciating at 17 to 25% every year. And I think the reason why we're seeing that kind of appreciation in Hendersonville is just simply because of a lack of inventory. People want to move there. They want to buy real estate. And maybe Hendersonville could, maybe if the leaders, city council people in Hendersonville are listening to this, hit me up, because I think that there are some things that we can do to bring more affordable housing into Hendersonville, which is much, much needed. Hendersonville is such a unique city for me because it's kind of insulated. It is got everything that somebody should need or want to live in Hendersonville. There's really very few reasons why you have to leave and go to the city of Nashville. And it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful out there with the lake and everything. So, more people are going to want to move to Hendersonville. Like I said, we want people of all different backgrounds, all different income levels. We should all be allowed to live together. Now, Williamson County, with that price of $1.1 million, those are very unique economics for that county in particular. And one of the reasons is because it does seem to attract a lot of musicians, entrepreneurs, business owners from all over are moving to Williamson County. So that's a unique situation there. But it has done a lot. The leaders of that county and the city of Franklin actually have done a lot to bring in more generational housing and more affordable housing to Williamson County in general. And you can just look at Fairview, you can look at Nolensville and see it happening in those two cities for sure. The other reason why people want to come here from, California, New York, and these high tax areas is because you can still make some money in real estate, y'all. Our average cap rates are 7.5%. So you can still, that's not something that can be matched in other areas. And we've got some huge corporations making Nashville and the Gold Coast their home. Companies like Oracle, Amazon, and 12 of the Forbes top 2,000 global companies are starting to move into this area. And in a way that makes the city of Nashville a bit recession-proof because we just have so much going on here. There's so much demand for employment here in this area. Now, what we see is there's always two sides of every coin. Yes, it's wonderful that people are moving to Middle Tennessee, which means that there is a lot more demand, and we certainly feel it in our home prices. If you are currently a homeowner, you are benefiting from the appreciation and the equity that you are earning in your house. And if you are not a homeowner, I encourage you, like I do every single week on this program, without fail, buy a house. Buy a house, buy whatever you can afford. There is a place for you to live in every area that is affordable and is in your price range. It may not be the HGTV dream of your home of your dreams, but it is something that is affordable for you to get started into homeownership. You do not want to miss this boat. It is only going to get better from here. So definitely, if you're looking at buying a home in 2026, give me a call. Y'all, I am not a real estate agent, but I have a network of real estate agents and loan officers that can help you through this process. I work with the best in the biz, and give me a shout. We'll connect you with someone great. My phone number is 615-426. Let's try that again, everybody. My phone number is 615-549-1933. That's 615-549-1933. Give me a shout. Now, what's also interesting is that in Middle Tennessee, we've got the longest days on market. Houses here are sitting on the market for 71 days right now, and that is even longer than it was just a few months ago when it was in the 60s. So if you are selling your house here in Middle Tennessee, hang tight. It's going to take you, on average, 71 days to move into a contract. Y'all, capital gains and estate planning is so important for clients who are buying and selling houses in the Gold Coast because, like I said, these are high net worth individuals, and things like capital gains taxes and estate planning, it is going to affect you here in this market. So If you're a realtor and you're tuning in, you're going to want to listen up to this program. I've got tons of fantastic information coming up that you are definitely going to want to share with your clients, okay? And if you are considering moving here from another state, then I hope that you're going to find this information useful, especially if you're coming from a state like California, which is a community property state. So when we come back from the break, we're going to break down capital gains taxes. What are they? Why do they affect and how do they affect residential real estate homeowners? And what exactly is the National Association of Realtors trying to do about it? Y'all, we'll be right back. You're listening to The Real Deal on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm your host, Kim Hollingshead. We'll be right back. Welcome to The Real Deal. I'm your host, Kim Hollingshead. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN in beautiful Nashville, Tennessee. You know, we were talking about it at the top of the show that Nashville is not the East Coast. It's not the West Coast. It's the Gold Coast. And we call it the Gold Coast because there is a massive influx of capital and high net worth individuals who are moving to Middle Tennessee and choosing to make this area home, so much so that the average purchase price, median purchase price of a home in Williamson County is $1.1 million. It is mind-blowing. Beautiful, beautiful county. If you haven't been, highly recommend that you check it out. If you are coming from another state, definitely take a look at Williamson County. It is a stunner. I mean, absolutely beautiful area to live. Now, at that price point of $1.1 million, if you sell your real estate at that price point, you will most surely be affected by what are called capital gains taxes. Anybody who's, buying a house in that price range probably knows what that is, but it is basically, a tax on the money that you make on the investment in real estate. There are certain exceptions. If the house that you live in, your primary residence, is excluded from the payment of capital gains taxes up to $250,000 if you're single and $500,000 if you're married. To qualify for this exclusion, you have to have lived in the property for at least 2 out of the past 5 years. You have to have, it has to be your primary residence. It cannot be used for business or for rental purposes. And, it was not acquired or purchased through a 1031 exchange. So those are some basic requirements. Now, what the National Association of Realtors is seeking to do is they're seeking to increase that exclusion from $250,000 if you're single or $500,000 if you're married. They're looking to double that. They want it to go up to $500,000 for a single person and $1 million for a married couple. And they also want that to be indexed for inflation. Well, why is this important? Because the exclusion for capital gains taxes on the primary residence was actually passed originally in 1997. And that is almost 30 years ago, you guys. And at that time, the average purchase price of a house was only $160,000. Well, right now, the average price of a home in the United States is $400,000. So even if we were to double the exclusion, it still doesn't catch up to where we were at the time that bill was originally passed. Unfortunately, there has been absolutely no increase in that exclusion for almost 30 years now. So the National Association of Realtors has come out. It's called the More Homes on the Market Act that they are encouraging Congress to pass. And I personally think this is a fantastic bill. I think it's very much needed. Guys, I mean, especially here in Middle Tennessee, the average price of a house in Davidson County is at around $500,000. Of course, we talk about Williamson County being 1.1 mil, but the average prices in this entire area are just higher than the national average. And so here it's really, really going to affect our homeowners more than anything. Now, there's a few reasons why this is important. First of all, it's because, this kind of a capital gains taxes actually affects seniors more than it does any other demographic. We don't ever want to be doing tax structures in a way that affects seniors the most. That is counterproductive, right? What we like to do is we like to say to our seniors, you've paid taxes your entire year, you're living on Social Security, and or on your investments, your retirement. We understand most of you are on a fixed income. You have higher medical expenses than, younger people do. And so we want to give you tax breaks, not make you pay higher taxes than the rest of America. Now, let's go through this example of exactly how the capital gains taxes actually works. So let's just say that you're in Williamson County, and we're going to go a little bit higher than average. We're going to say $1.2 million to keep the math easy. But let's say that house was purchased for $200,000 in the year 2000. The reason is because that was actually the average purchase price of a house in the year 2000 was about $200,000. It is mind-blowing that has gone up so high. So, you buy your house, married couple living there. They've been living there for 26 years. And now if that same couple wanted to sell their house, they would be in the highest tax bracket for capital gains taxes. Only the first $500,000 would be exempt from the payment of those taxes. Now, we're assuming that this house is free and clear, which after 26 years, almost all homes are, actually paid for after that, that point in time. These people may have a reverse mortgage, but just for the sake of the example, we're going to say that it's free and clear. So we're going to say that the exclusion is $500,000 because they're a married couple. They've lived there at least 2 out of the past 5 years. It's their primary residence. They don't use any portion of it for business or rental purposes, and it was not acquired through a 1031 exchange. Okay, so they qualify. That still leaves $700,000 that is going to be taxed at the highest bracket of 20%. But not only that, here's just a little sweet kiss. You also get to pay a 3.8% Medicare surtax on top of it. So that actually makes the capital gains taxes that are due on this so much higher. So that actually makes the capital gains taxes paid on this so much higher. So let's take a look at it. For a married couple, they're going to be paying $144,000 in cap gains taxes. If one of the spouses were to die and the surviving spouse did not sell within, 2 years, then they would be actually paying tax, and their exclusion would be only up to $250,000 because they're treated as a single person. That person would pay actually $208,000 in cap gains taxes. This is what is known as an equity penalty, and it's also known as a widow's tax trap, which means that if you don't sell within the 2 years, you're paying extra taxes that you never accounted for. And let's face it, this person is a surviving spouse, and they should not be penalized in the tax code in such a way. They need that money to live on. They're now a widow or a widower. Guys, so NAR's bill is so helpful because what it does is it's going to jump that exclusion up to $500,000 if you're single or $1 million if you're married. So let's go back through the numbers. $1.2 million for the sale of the house. Let's just assume it's free and clear, which means that if they're single, they're going to be paying $148,000 in taxes. It's a $60,000 savings. But here's the kicker. If they're married, they're only going to pay $30,000 in cap gains taxes, which is $114,000 in savings. Guys, that is definitely doable for a lot of people who are seniors. They may not, if you're making $1 million on the equity in your house, paying $144,000 in cap gains taxes could absolutely deter you from selling that real estate. However, if you know that you only have to pay $30,000 in taxes, that's really going to help. Now, some people might say, well, that's not fair. They're making $1 million on their real estate. Guys, I want to remind everybody that the average purchase price of a house in the United States is only $400,000, and that we are living in the Gold Coast, okay? So there's a reason why here in Middle Tennessee, this is especially interesting to us because many people own houses that are just worth more than $500,000. And so, we need to take a look at this. We're going to talk about whether or not it's fair, should people who are making $1 million in real estate, should they pay more? But again, just as a reminder, this is affecting seniors more than any other demographic because they're really the ones who live in the house the longest and long enough to where they've actually seen this kind of equity gained. And we really don't want to be taxing our seniors, Also prevents seniors from being able to downsize because they're not going to sell that. If you're selling a house for 1.2 mil and you don't walk away with but $1 million, less than $1 million if you're single, your spouse passed away, it can really put a damper on you being more willing to downsize and to move. And what that does is it kind of clogs up the market. So we're seeing that the National Association of Realtors data is indicating that the big problem for real estate right now, not the hugest, Kim, the big problem in real estate is that there's a lack of inventory, and that lack of inventory is due to a lack of mobility in the market. And this is one of the reasons why it's a very complicated market. Real estate is. This sector of the economy is extremely large. It is very complicated, a lot of moving parts. So this one bill would not solve the problem of mobility. Of course, interest rates play a huge role in that as well. However, what it does is it does kind of loosen up the market a bit in its own way to allow seniors to move. You get families being able to buy those houses, and now there's first-time home buyers are able to afford and buy something in their price range, and there's inventory there for them to do it. So capital gains taxes is, one of those issues that we're kind of unique in this area in that it actually affects us here in a way that it may not necessarily affect people in other areas. Now, when we come back from the break, I kind of touched on this, that there is something called the widow's tax trap. And when we come back from the break, we're going to delve into this a little bit more so I can help explain exactly what that is and how it's actually, affecting the housing market, and it affects homeowners in a huge, huge way. And what are some estate planning tools that you can use to kind of get around that? You're listening to The Real Deal on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Real Deal. I'm your host, Kim Hollingshead. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN in Nashville, Tennessee. On today's program, we are talking about us being in the Gold Coast of the United States. Gold Coast because we have an influx of capital, influx of wealthy individuals in this market, and our real estate has been doing very, very well. It's been appreciating like crazy over the past few years to the point where now the average purchase price in Williamson County is actually $1.1 million. And what that does is it makes things like capital gains taxes relevant to us, because if there's, even in the home that you lived in your primary residence, the exclusion for the payment of capital gains taxes is only $250,000 if you're single, or up to $500,000 if you're married. So if you're living in that $1.1 million average priced home in Williamson County, capital gains taxes are going to affect you. Now, we talked about the widow's trap, how there is this, full exclusion that a widow could be entitled to for the payment of capital gains taxes. If she doesn't sell within 2 years, then she is treated like, I'm saying she because it's called the widow's tax trap. It affects men obviously as well. But if she doesn't sell within 2 years, then she's treated as that single person, and her exclusion is cut in half from $500,000 down to $250,000. So how do you qualify? There are, of course, it's the IRS, you guys. There's always like this litany of requirements, all these tests that you have to pass. Now, if the spouse passes away, then the surviving spouse could be entitled to this full exclusion of the full $500,000 if, number one, as we talked about, the sale occurs within 2 years. Number two, cannot be remarried within that 2-year period. And number three, all of the other requirements, such as living there for 2 out of the past 5 years, did not obtain the property through a 1031 exchange, and didn't use any portion of it for business or rental purposes. All of those requirements still apply. But after 2 years, then the spouse is treated as single. And so I know all of my listeners are going, wait a minute, Kim, that is so unfair. Why would you do that to someone who's a widow? Like 2 years is not very much time. Yes. However, don't forget about the step-up basis, okay? So this is the benefit. This is the added little kind of tool that the IRS has built into the code to help widows and widowers. Now, what it is basically treats the value of the home at the current fair market value rather than at the original purchase price. So we have this example. $1.2 million is a purchase price. $1.2 million is the sales price. Sorry. The property was acquired 26 years ago and they purchased it for $200,000. That's our example. The original basis is $200,000 because that's what the couple purchased the home for back in the year 2000. Okay, so that's why the taxes, the cap gains taxes is calculated on $1 million with, the exclusion being applied. But what happens when there's a step-up basis is that basically the home is not treated like a $200,000 home. The IRS says, well, what's the current fair market value? Current fair market value is $1.2 million, right? Because that's what the house is being sold at. So therefore, there is no cap gains tax owed on it because they treat it like a $0 gain, which is brilliant. Now, how much of a step up in basis you get is going to depend on what state that you're in, because it depends on whether the property ownership is a tenancy in common, community property state or common law state. Because in Tennessee, we have something called the tenancy by the entirety. Tennessee is a common law state. Married couples own property as a couple, okay? But the way that the law treats it, and this is the best way that I've been able to describe it to people so that they kind of understand what I'm saying here because it's complicated, but the law will treat it as though each person owns 100% of the house. So it's not like the husband owns 50% and the wife owns 50%. That is a community property state. Each one of them owns 50% of the real estate. In Tennessee, with it being a common law state, each spouse, if they own property as a tenancy by the entirety, they're treated where each person owns 100%. It is like total ownership of the entire asset by the both of them. The reason that we choose to do this in this state is because here, there are a lot of couples, and we're just a very traditional, older state than the state of California. As you guys know, Tennessee's, been around for, much, much longer than California has. And in Tennessee, with it being common law, you have a husband and wife, and oftentimes, back then, the wife did not own anything, and she didn't work. She didn't have her own bills. She couldn't get a credit card without her husband signing on it, I think until like the 70s, I'm pretty sure. Couldn't open a bank account without her husband's permission to do that. So it made sense that because the wife in Tennessee doesn't really have any control over finances, this is way back in the day now, of course things are different, that way back in the day, that she wouldn't have control over the finances, that she should not lose her house. She should be insulated from any debts of her husband. That preserves the family home, and it prevents the family home from being taken by creditors, okay? What happens is in Tennessee, the way that the step-up in basis works is that because you're owning it as a tenancy by the entirety, then the IRS will only allow you to take 50% of the fair market value. So the spouse, they get to have their step-up in basis, the deceased spouse, but the surviving spouse doesn't. So in our example of the $1.2 million, you have this house that's being sold for $1.2 million. So 50% of that is $600,000. So the 600, on the old basis would be $200,000, but the new basis is $700,000. And the reason is because the surviving spouse retains 50% of the original basis, which was the $200,000. And then the deceased spouse, they take 50% of the step up in basis of the current fair market value. So they take, theirs is 50%, which is $600,000. And then the original surviving spouse only has $100,000 for a total of $700,000 is the new basis, which for a $1.2 million home still accounts for $500,000 in profit, subject to cap gains. Now, the exclusion of the $500,000 would apply fully to this surviving spouse if she were to sell within 2 years. But if she doesn't sell within 2 years, then it goes down to $250,000, and now she's paying cap gains on the $250,000 that's left over. Not entirely fair. Okay, we're not hugely a fan of this. It does seem to be a little bit unfair to surviving spouses that they have to hurry up and sell a house that they have lived in and all of their stuff is in it and they're comfortable living there, and they're forced to sell within 2 years, or else they'll be subject to cap gains tax as a single person. It's not right. So lucky for you, you do work with and you're a listener of the program. And so now you're going to learn about a couple little tools that we have in our estate planning tool belt here in Tennessee that can definitely help us out with this, okay? You're listening to The Real Deal on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm Kim Hollingshead. When we come back, we're going to talk about a couple of trusts that can possibly be set up to help you out with all this. Welcome back to The Real Deal. I'm your host, Kim Hollingshead, and today we have an episode that is jam-packed with just nonstop information, guys. I mean, I wanted to bring this to the table because we are in the Gold Coast. You know, property values are high here in Middle Tennessee. We have a lot of high net worth individuals who are living in this state, and we need to know, especially if you're a realtor, you need to know and listen up to the tips that I'm giving in this episode. If you didn't catch the full episode, you missed the first 3 segments of the show, definitely catch us. We're on Spotify, tons of reels on social media, YouTube, all the places. Go find the show and listen in its entirety. And we're going to, you're going to know more about cap gains taxes than you ever wanted to before. But because our property values here in Middle Tennessee are so high, it's important that you really do know it and that you understand the rules. Now, we talked about the widow's tax trap. We talked about step up in basis and how all of that works. Now, what we're going to talk about next is, why is this unfair for states like Tennessee? Is because Tennessee being a common law state, then the step up in basis is only allowed on the deceased spouse's 50% of the house. Okay, doesn't seem fair. If you were in a community property state, you would get the full 100% step up in basis. It's not split in half. And the reason is because in states like California, what they do is they actually the IRS treats it as though the quote community owns the property and not necessarily the spouses as individuals, okay? Now, what Tennessee did is in 2010, the legislatures here in this state said, we've got to do something to fix this. This doesn't seem quite fair to us. We don't like it. So they enacted a bill that allows couples here in Tennessee to create what is called the Community Property Trust. That allows couples to opt in to community property by using the tool, the vehicle of a trust to do it. Now, what that does is it impacts, basis. It will fundamentally change tax liability through a divorce. All of this must be disclosed very clearly in the trust document as it's being drafted, okay? But it's brilliant because it does allow for that full 100% step up in basis in Tennessee that couples in California and other community property states enjoy, okay? Now, I am not an estate planning attorney. Do not hold me accountable. I definitely recommend that if you're looking at doing something like this, you need to talk to an estate planning attorney. And if you're looking to hire one, you don't know where to start, give me a call. We're connected to estate planning attorneys. Phone number is 615-549-1933. We are glad to point you in the right direction. Now, what are some of the pros of a community property trust? Pros are, number one, it wipes out cap gains, right? Because the step up in basis is 100%. So there's no cap gains there. Number two, it helps you to avoid probate. And number three, it is a revocable trust, all right? Now, there are a couple of significant downsides. The number one is that if you do enter into a CPT, then you get a divorce, it will significantly affect the way that the assets are divided in that divorce. It is automatically treated as a 50-50. It does not matter who contributed more during the marriage. All right. So it just makes it harder. Now, the second sort of downside of it is that you have creditor exposure. When you own property as a tenancy by the entirety, creditors cannot attach their liens to your house. They can only attach the liens to the surviving spouse. So there are some mechanisms in place, some tools that they have in their toolbox to kind of ride it out and wait for, someone to pass away and then try to attach the lien at that time. But I mean, I've not really seen that happen very often, to be perfectly honest with you. But you don't have the benefit of that creditor protection, that shield, using a CPT the way that you would owning property as a tenancy by the entirety. So there's another second type of a trust that is available to people in Tennessee that we love, and it's called the Marital Asset Protection Trust, guys. So this is actually a very unique trust for Tennessee, and what it does is it seeks to give the benefits of a trust, but without losing that tenancy by the entirety shield against creditors. So you still protect it. Now, the downside is you don't get that double step up in basis the way that you do with the community property trust. The IRS does not honor the Marital Asset Protection Trust for that step up in basis. It actually treats it where you only get the 50% in the step up in basis. So what a lot of people do is they actually bifurcate their assets. So they have their marital home, and they're going to put their marital home either as a tenancy by the entirety, or they're going to put it in a Marital Asset Protection Trust. And then all of their investments, they put those in the Community Property Trust so that they can take, because, investment properties are the ones that are they're all subject to cap gains taxes. So those should definitely go into the Community Property Trust. If you are if you are married and you guys are owning your investment properties in your names individually, and you are not taking advantage of a trust, especially the Community Property Trust, for your investment properties, I think you definitely need to take a look at possibly doing that. It would be really important estate planning tool for you. And if you need some advice, if you want to get connected to someone, give me a call. It's 615-549-1933. Now, a lot of people out there, they like to actually convey property to their kids via quitclaim deed during their life because, they watch a lot of financial advisors or listen to them on radio programs who say, keep your house out of probate, make sure that you quitclaim the house to your kids before you pass away so that, they're not affected by any kind of probate with the house. I get asked the question a lot of times, well, is that if I quitclaim the house to my kids, are they going to be subject to gift taxes? Now, look, I am not an accountant. I am not a tax attorney. I am not allowed to give tax advice. Do not take this and what I'm about to say is tax advice. But there's some common knowledge that I can share with you guys on the radio show. The thing is that they're not probably going to pay any kind of gift tax on a quitclaim deeded house. Look, you guys know the One Big Beautiful Bill. This One Big Beautiful Bill did a lot of things for the country. Good and bad. I mean, it was one big, beautiful bill, all right. And one of the things that was in this bill is that it actually took just the exemption on gifts and estates up to $15 million. So you would have had to have given away $15 million of your stuff and your money, your real estate, all of your assets during your life before you would even be subject to any gift or estate taxes. And that's a lot of money. Okay, I don't know a lot of people who are giving away that kind of money during their lifetime. So pretty sure that most people are going to be insulated from any kind of payment of taxes at a federal level if they quitclaim the house to the kids. Now, where this is important that you guys listen up is that if you do quitclaim deed that house to the kids during their life, then they're going to pay cap gains taxes based on the original basis. They don't get the stepped up basis benefit that someone who inherits a house gets. Okay. So we're using our example, $1.2 million. The original basis on that house was the original purchase price of $200,000 back in 2000. So $200,000 is the original basis. If you quitclaim deed the house to the kids during life and they turn around and sell it after you pass away, they're going to pay cap gains taxes based on the original basis, which is $200,000, which means that they're paying cap gains on $1 million. Are they entitled to the benefits of the exclusions? No, because they're not the ones who purchased the house. Okay, so they're paying cap gains on $1 million. However, if they were to inherit the house, then they get the stepped up in basis. So they actually the basis becomes fair market value, which equals $0 in cap gains. And that can save them a lot of money. We're talking about over $200,000 right here in tax savings from, the difference between quitclaim deeded house and that original basis versus the inherited house and the fair market value. So, you have to definitely take that into account. Now, one of my favorite tools to kind of get around this a little bit is by using something called a life estate. You will see very savvy financial planners and estate planning attorneys using this tool to help their clients and their heirs. So what that essentially means is that the person who originally owned the house, the parents usually, they will have a life estate in the property, and then the remainder in fee is given to the kids. And so what they get at that point is they get the full step up in, they don't pay any taxes at that point. But that is a way to, the IRS will treat it like an inherited property, even though the parents retain the life estate. So that's a way, and it also keeps it out of probate. That's kind of one of my favorite tools to use in the toolbox. So guys, this is such a complicated issue. I know that it is, but again, more money, more problems, okay? You live in the Gold Coast, you're going to have to talk about this kind of stuff. And this is important to your clients. If you're a real estate agent, you really need to be in the know on how most of these rules work. You don't need to be an expert. Of course, we have accountants, financial planners, estate planners. Everyone is here to support you and to help you in this, but you should be able to answer some very basic questions for your clients. So guys, thank you so much for joining us on The Real Deal. Like I said, I'm your host, Kim Hollingshead. I absolutely love being here with you guys every single week. And this episode was so jam-packed with information, guys. We're already done. We're out. Peace.